if you're getting into guitar wiring and you're unsure which soldering iron you need to buy, or maybe you have one that's not powerful enough, today I'm going to give you a really good option, which is, as you can see, very small, but believe it or not, powerful enough to handle the job. So I'm going to cover what comes with this, where you can get it, some advantages and disadvantages between this and other soldering irons, and I'll have a few tips and tricks at the end, so stick around. I'm Dave with Stringing It Together, and let's dive in. So here it is here, the F-NIRSi, or the F-NIRSi, I believe is the correct pronunciation, soldering iron. And it's very small, but believe it or not, this thing is 65 watts. So here's what you get out of the box. Now, I don't actually have the box because I threw it away because I'm not crazy. Well, my wife makes me throw things away. So what you get out of the box is this soldering iron, the charger, which is obviously 65 watt, and 6 tips. Here's the 6th tip here, which I've used. Now, it also comes with a little stand, which I think I also lost because you don't really need it because you can just take this on and off, which is a handy feature. So at the time of making this video, this whole thing is $69 Canadian on Amazon. So if you do the conversion rate, it's like $5 American or something. And the reason I got it is I was moving around quite a bit, and you know, it's really handy to have something that you can just take with you. I can fit it in my toolbox very easily, and yeah, it's a great option for that. Now I'll talk about some other advantages and disadvantages of this soldering iron. So another great thing for guitar wiring specifically, or if you're doing sort of smaller projects, it's just how well you can fit it into small spaces, and the maneuverability is great with this little grip here. It really feels nice in the hand and is easy to keep a steady grip like a pencil. And before I plug it in and show you the interface, I want to talk about the first disadvantage, which is the length of this cord. Now it's a 3-foot cord, as you can maybe tell, and obviously I can use an extension cord, but I'd rather not because the flexibility of the extension cord is not the same as this. So that's one thing that I don't like about it, but again, you have an extension cord you can put on your desk. It's not the end of the world. So it comes with 6 different tips, and they're very easy to interchange. This just unscrews. Obviously don't grab it when it's still hot, and they pop right in very easily. So you can tell how well made it is by holding it. It's very heavy and very low tolerance for the insertion of that. And another great thing is how quickly it heats up. So I'll show you that in real time. So there it got up to the sort of set temperature of around 620 degrees or 630 in that amount of time from cold. So that's advantage number 1, is you really don't have to wait around for it. And then when you're done, you can just put the lid back on and set it on your desk. So it also has the temperature dial, so you can hit that and adjust the temperature to whatever you want. Yeah, and it goes all the way up to 780 degrees, which I prefer. I'll crank it right up there, and you know, some people might jump in the comments and say, oh, you can't do that, and that's true. If you're starting out, you don't want to start soldering at 780 degrees Fahrenheit, but the way that I think about it is the faster you're in and out, the better. So I like a higher temperature, but if you're just starting out, just check the specs on your pot or whatever you're soldering. So I'll give you a rundown of the interface. So if you do buy it, you can use this as your operating manual, and it's not super intuitive, so that's why I figured I'd do this. To turn it on, you hit the left button, and that gets you to the temperature screen. If you want to change the temperature, hold the left button, or press it once, sorry, and then you can go up or down. And then you have to wait for it to go back to the previous screen. And if you want to get to, or if you want to turn it off, hold the right button. Okay, so there's on or off. And then I'll show you the settings. So to get to the settings, you can see there's a whole bunch of different settings. There's brightness. That one's pretty self-explanatory, but to get into that, you hold the right button. And then you can go up or down. And then to go back, you hold the left button. So it kind of makes sense. If you want to calibrate the temperature, same thing, hold the right button. And you can calibrate the temperature. I'm going to go back, hit the left button. Temperature, sleep time, you can set the sleep time, sleep temperature, child lock, open or close. You can change the language, handheld, and again, when you want to select something, you just hold the right button. And you can select the voltage. I just like to leave it at 20, but you might want to be able to customize it. So next I'll show you this thing in action and give you a few tips and tricks. So tip number one is keep that tip clean. So you can use a wet sponge, but you can also use a jar of some kind, some steel wool, and you just put a little dab on there and then rub it in the steel wool. Yeah, you want it to be nice and shiny like that. Tip number two, use something called helping hands. Basically just keeps you from fumbling around and holds things steady. This is a very simple one I made in a previous video, which I'll link to at the end. Here's an easy way to solder two wires together. So I've got these alligator clips, pretty easy to make. You just take a piece of wood and then you drill two holes and stick the alligator clips in there. And got those wires twisted up. Make sure you add the heat shrink on there before you solder it. So that's just stuff that you can pick up at any hardware store typically. And what I like to do is put the solder on first, come up from underneath, and that way you'll start to see the solder come wick in between all the little strands there, and then you come in from the top. So hopefully you'll be able to see that with the camera. Just get the tip on there and hold it on there until it heats up the wire enough to sort of wick into there. Okay, now it's going in. Now I come in from over top. And as you can see, the soldering iron does a pretty quick job. And you can just take the heat shrink, cover that up, and hit it with the lighter. So as you can tell, it heats everything up very quickly. It does the job, and I can tell by the feel of it that it's very well built. So I highly recommend the soldering iron. I'll give you one more option, which is the Weller WLC 140 watt soldering iron. I'll put a link to it in the description below if you want to check that one out. I was sort of going between that one or this one, but I ended up going with this one. That one's a little bit less expensive. And yeah, while I got you here, if you're interested in guitar wiring, then you can go to the description below, and there's a guitar wiring cheat sheet that you can download, and that'll go along with also a playlist that I'll also link to in the description, and that'll cover the basics of guitar wiring. It's called Guitar Wiring for Beginners. That'll get you a head start in learning and get you off the ground. And that's all for now. Give this a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and I'll see you next week.